knew Ben through his engineering work, and I'll hold up the other flap of the circus tent and say that I met him originally through juggling, and we became quick buddies in Portland, Oregon, where I briefly lived in the late 70s. And we quickly recognized each other as kindred spirits through the juggling networks. He eventually went to, I think I met him during his school vacations when he was still definitely a student at University of Washington as an undergraduate getting his engineering degree. And we were friends when he decided that he was going to major in engineering. And I later moved to the Bay Area, but we kept up a fast friendship, and I continued and still continue to go to the Northwest with alarming frequency. So we saw each other all the time. And we were buddies. We would write actual letters back in the era when we all wrote letters on paper and talk on the phone occasionally. And I got to know when he started making his decisions. He said he was interested in Nicaragua. He went initially on a summer vacation while he was in college to check it out, and came back committed to the idea that he was eventually going to go there after he graduated. He, even then, the full personality of Ben came through. He was just deliciously eccentric in so many ways, and challenged himself all the time in incredible ways. As you might know, he was also a really, really good unicycle rider and clown in addition to the juggling. And he decided that he wanted to ride his unicycle during a summer vacation from college from the Canadian border to the Mexican border and raise awareness along the way of the people's struggles in El Salvador and Nicaragua. In order to do this, he decided he was going to make a touring unicycle. After all, he was an engineering student, one that had a raised seat and had room for panniers on it, and he sent his specs to a shop, and they took so long in producing the parts that his trip was delayed, his departure from the Peace Arch at Blaine in Washington, right at the Canadian border. And so that summer, he only made it from the Canadian border to Santa Barbara, instead of all the way to Mexico. If he'd had the additional couple of weeks that he lost from the engineering snafu, he probably would have made it. When he came through San Francisco, we had arranged for a bunch of press to meet him at the Golden Gate Bridge. My juggling partner at the time, Larry, and I met him, and we passed a canopy of 7 juggling clubs over him as he rode underneath. It was captured on TV at the time, and there was a good opportunity to make some statements about what was going on politically. If anybody anywhere has any photos of that, please let me know. I've been searching for years. I know there were newspaper articles at the time, but the photo collections from that time were gone, so would love to have that. Anyway, that was the beginning of a friendship. When he decided to go to Nicaragua, he stayed in touch with me, and I helped support his clowning activities. When he first went to Nicaragua, it took, as you can imagine, there was lots of paperwork to actually get his work permit. And curiously, ironically, the office for INE, the Instituto Nicaragüense de Energía, the Energy Institute, the utility, was right across the street from where a big circus tent had been set up for the Circo Nacional. One of the movements that was in full flower at the time after the Sandinista takeover was to try to provide support for arts activities and cultural betterment. And so the government, in its own way, was trying to support circuses. So he had a lot of time to kill, and he went over and hung out with the circus people and made good friends, and ended up writing me a very pointed letter at one point saying, Nancy, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was basically, if you're not doing anything this year, I think you ought to start a fundraising campaign and get equipment and supplies to outfit the circuses in Nicaragua, because they're all running around in ragged leotards and they don't have any makeup and they don't have any equipment and they don't have red noses or any of this stuff. And how could you turn down something like that? So some of us formed Jugglers for Peace, and I managed to find a group of artists who answered what became known as the artist call to Nicaragua, and several delegations and tours went. My first trip in January '84 was with painters and photographers and sculptors and people who had also done their own independent fundraising and had collected enormous amounts of supplies to donate to the art schools and the different academies, and we had an amazing time. I went a number of times after that, and every time Ben would meet me, and he'd meet me with a list of gigs, basically. You know, we're juggling at this street party, and that health fair, and this neighborhood event, and I'd be tired and exhausted, and he would just like, you know, what do you do? Of course we're doing this. Come on, wake up, get up. Come on, we're going, we're doing it. Just get up and do it. You're here. This is what's at hand. So it was with that whole background that I came to know Ben and the work that he was doing. And I see quite a few people in this room that I know were at the memorial that we held for Ben after he was killed here in San Francisco at Herbst Hall, to overflow crowds and response internationally from everybody from Jesse Jackson to, I don't know, I can't remember all the names, but you know, the floods of hundreds of telegrams that came in with well wishes. Various people just instantaneously put up the money to rent the hall so we could have it. And I know, you know, most of you here have a connection of some sort to that, but I just wanted to give the perspective of somebody who was a friend and a friend of his family's, and not involved directly in the engineering work, but was able to support it by shipping his unicycle to him. You all were getting engineering supplies and welding equipment, and I was down at Kindle and Graham buying 180 twisties, the balloons that you blow up and tie into balloon animals, and shipping them down by the gross so, to supply him. Thanks.